Want more leads, more speaking gigs, and zero awkward cold DMs or emails? Well, podcast guesting is hands down one of the best business growth tools for speakers, coaches, and experts when done right. In this episode, I'm revealing how to be a strategic podcast guest who actually gets clients, not just compliments. And I'll share the common mistakes to avoid, what hosts really want from their guests, and how to turn every mic moment into long-term influence. So let's get into it. There's a lot of talk on social media about being a podcast guest. You probably even get emails in your inbox, like I do from time to time, inviting you to get booked onto particular shows as a podcast guest and people who are going to help you do that. Of course, you pay them for that privilege. But is that the right way to go forward? Is this something that you should definitely be thinking about doing? Well, look, I'll say this. I think podcast guesting can be great when it's good and can be frustrating when it's not. And so let me explain what I mean by that. I think a lot of people do sign up with agencies and hear people saying, oh, get on podcasts, and then just start getting on all sorts of different podcasts. But if they're not strategic about it, or if they've got an agency who's reaching out on their behalf, what you will probably find is that you'll be getting onto shows that aren't particularly relevant to you and what you want to deliver. And maybe shows that don't even have much audience. What a lot of agencies doing, and I won't say all of them because some definitely are better than others, but what a lot of these so-called agencies are doing is really just looking for podcasts that are in the industry area that you're in and not really looking at who the host is, what it's about, or sometimes even whether it's actually an interview-based show, and will send pitches with your bio and information to the hosts, hoping that they might consider bringing you on as a guest onto their show. Now, as a podcast host myself, I do not love most, probably 99% of the pitches that I receive from those kinds of agencies. And I get them in my inbox pretty much every day, sometimes several times a day. And more often than not, it's really just that they have people who are paying them to get them onto podcasts, and they're just going to blast every podcast that they can find and hope that they get some return on that. Now, there is a very small percentage of the people who do get presented to me by these people who actually are potentially a good fit for my show. I have had some really cool guests from those kinds of introductions that I wouldn't otherwise have found for myself. But that is a very small percentage. This is one of the reasons why I mostly don't say to these agencies, don't contact me. I'm probably a little more open-minded than some others, but the vast majority of guests that they put forward to my show are not a good fit and not suitable for what I want to deliver to my audience. But there are other things to consider here as well. Many hosts will not even consider proposals or pitches from agencies, and not just because they don't know much about the show most of the time, or because the guests aren't usually a good fit, but also because very often the guests who are being put forward don't know anything about you. They don't know anything about your show. They have no connection with you other than their agency is trying to get them onto your show. And so if you want guests who actually do appreciate you and your show, that's a good way to do it. But I'll say this, many of the pitches that I receive from agencies or even sometimes from individuals have just taken the briefest of looks at some of my most recent episodes, probably haven't listened to them, even though they'll say they have. I loved your episode, I titled this and with this guest. And generally they haven't, and they don't really have any idea who I am or what my show is about. They're just looking to get their guest booked. And that's hard for me to want to respond to. And so I get it that a lot of hosts just end up blocking all these agents. The same as, I get emails pretty much every day from people who want to help me grow my YouTube channel. It's like, well, I appreciate that, but I'm not just going to go with some rando who shows up in my inbox. And it can definitely be the same with podcast guests. So I personally use podcast matching services as well as inviting guests who I would like to have on my show. So the recent episode with Kennedy, for example, about email marketing, there was not through any kind of podcast matching service. I'm in Kennedy's community. We got more personally introduced through a previous guest on my show, but I already knew who Kennedy was. He was already on my guest wish list, and I was very happy to bring him on. John Morris, who I've got coming up soon, comedy writer, a bit of a legend in comedy writing in the UK. Pretty much any top comedy program in the UK, he has been a writer for. And so getting an interview with him was not going to happen through any kind of podcast connecting agency. That was me finding someone who I wanted to have on the show and reaching out to them. And sometimes when you reach out to people who are pretty well known, you're going to get no's, and that's fine. And sometimes you're going to get yeses. And it's the same for you as a guest as well. If you're reaching out to shows that are top level shows, you're likely to get a lot of no's unless you are already competing or showing up in that sort of arena as a top level guest, speaker, coach, whatever it is you do. I wouldn't say don't apply to go on top level shows. If you have a great topic, if you have really good IP, if you are very eloquent and good at speaking about what you do and you're a great guest, it might be worth a try. But be prepared for the no's because you'll probably get them. But also know that you can still go back to that show in the future if you want to try again, but work on it and get some improvement over time. Here's something really important. If you're getting started with this, you will probably want to go on a few newer, pretty unknown shows just to get some experience in talking about what you do and what you offer and get a bit more familiar with the formats. Now, you'll have different experiences with more experienced interviewers and longer running shows for sure. People who are just starting out with a podcast may not have the interview skills. You might find it's not the most fun interview. It can still be worth going on those kinds of shows. But if you are consistently going on shows that you're just being booked onto and just to get on as many shows as possible, you're probably going to find that it's not going to move the needle. And it's going to be very frustrating for you to be investing a lot of time, money, energy, your knowledge and expertise as well into shows that aren't really getting downloads and aren't going to move the needle for you at all. So they may or may not, but the chances are you're going to end up thinking that podcast guesting doesn't work because you're not going on the right kinds of shows and you're not being strategic about it. So strategy is super important. And I actively would encourage you to avoid the spray and pray approach to podcasting of just going on as many shows as possible and hoping that it delivers some results, because it generally doesn't. Most podcasts are getting less than 30 downloads an episode. And whilst that can still lead to some potential leads for you, it may not be where you're wanting to go to, and it may end up not being very effective for you if you're looking to grow your brand and to actually get some lead flow from this as well. So how do you find the right shows to go on? Well, I think there's a bit of work to do first. And so putting in the time to have a bit of practice and getting good at talking about what you do with a few shows that might be pretty much inconsequential to you in the long run is going to be good. Get some reps in. I hope you would do this with your speaking work as well, that you get the reps in before you start getting paid for a keynote that you have created. If you haven't ever delivered it before, you don't know how it's going to land. I would never get up on stage and deliver something that I haven't practiced and expect to be paid for it as well. So as a paid professional, since it's essential that you are as good as possible at talking about what you do and being a good guest. There are some things I would encourage you to have ready for going on podcasts, maybe even before you go on any test run podcasts as well, because it's going to help you to be able to approach these things when they come up on the podcast. But knowing what you offer and being clearly able to talk about that, having a clear introduction that sets you up for some credibility. Ideally, you at least want to have an active lead magnet page as well, or somewhere where you can direct people to go. Now, I don't care if it's your LinkedIn profile or if it's your website, so long as you have somewhere you can direct people to go if they want to reach out to you. But if you actually have something like a lead magnet or a quiz or anything along those lines, it can make a huge difference to the results that you get from your podcast guesting. So you need to think of this as a media strategy. That's exactly what it is. Think about it this way. If you're looking to be interviewed on TV shows for what you do, you wouldn't expect to just show up and wing it and hope for the best, right? You would want to, I hope, maximize the potential of that experience, which means you have somewhere for people to go to find out more about you, or at least be able to search your name online and find something about you there that gives them a clue of how they can get in contact with you. Now, this could just as easily be your social media as your website or really anywhere, but you need somewhere for people to go. You need to be findable after you've been on the show as well. It can be really helpful. Can be really helpful to have a media kit ready to go, so that you, when you're looking to go on shows, you can send them. You can send them your images, your introduction, some background on you. You can maybe even send some clips or excerpts or other shows that you've been on, so they can get a sense of how you show up on those episodes. But any background that you feel is particularly relevant. It's not so important really these days that you share how many followers you have on each of your social media platforms, unless you want to, because the majority of podcasters are not that interested in leveraging your audience so much as they are about having you on theirs and probably talking to you about what it is you talk about. So having clear IP, clear intellectual property frameworks, and being able to talk eloquently or have some stories ready to go, have some memorable moments ready to share and talk, it's going to be far more helpful to you to be prepared for these things. Be clear for each show you go on, what's the win for you? Is it that you're looking to get lead flow? Are you looking to connect with the host because it's somebody who you maybe want to work with in the future in some way, shape, or form? So you can use this as a tool to build relationships. But I would say be somewhat respectful when you're guesting on shows, that even though you're giving up your time and your knowledge for these appearances, it's not really a good idea to be a diva about it. And I've certainly had some people approach me on my show who've been like that. And honestly, when I encounter that attitude, I will not bring them on the show. I have cancelled guests who have shown bad attitude to me because it's not a great start. It makes an uncomfortable beginning. So if you start being a bit of a diva with the people that you want to show up for, it's it's a different story if they start messing you about, if they're playing with the times or not showing up for recordings, things like that. By all means, reach out to them and speak to them, and you might not be too impressed. I would say there have certainly been times for me where I haven't been able to get to my studio for a recording in time for a session, and it's rare. And it usually means something has come up that stopped me from getting to the studio rather than me just not managing my time very well. And so in those instances, people will nearly always find, when you reach out and let them know, hey, I'm really sorry about this. Something has come up. Or one time it was a procession through the city and I just couldn't get through that. It's a very common thing here in Spain. But a procession through the city, the roads were blocked off. I couldn't cross over. There were people everywhere. And it took me half an hour longer than usual to get into my office and into my studio for an early recording time. These things do happen sometimes. So you might need to be a little patient and give a bit of leeway. But most hosts will at least try and let you know that they might be running late. But if someone does start messing you about, by all means, call them out on it, or just take them off your list and say, all right, we're not doing a show. Sorry. But that's that. You had your chance. It's entirely up to you how you want to handle that. But I say don't be an ass about it, because it could affect you for future opportunity. So show up as the kind of person who you would want to be connecting with as well as you go for this. There are some people out there right now who are charging people for being guests on their show. I do not like this. Now, I'm not saying you should never do it. I would probably encourage you not to do it. I would not encourage any of my clients to go down that path, because I don't think podcasts should be monetizing the knowledge and expertise, the same as these organizations that ask speakers to pay to get on their stages. I don't know. There may be exceptions and situations where it could work out and could be worth your while. I generally don't think it is. I would never pay to go on someone else's stage. I wouldn't pay to go on someone else's podcast. I think there are better ways to monetize a show. And also, if it's pay to play, you're just appearing on a show that will have anyone on who is willing to pay to go on, rather than people who have actually been properly vetted for the show. And who's really listening to that anyway? I would be very doubtful about their listener numbers or the quality of people who are doing that. So I doubt that you're going to get much bang for your buck in those sorts of situations when they have probably, and they might have recording going out every day of somebody who's paid to be on that episode. Make your own decision on this, but just know the vast majority of podcasts will never ask you to pay to be a guest. Now, I think it's a bit different if you are a celebrity or you're very well known in your industry and your time is very, very valuable and you might put a premium on that, then sure, you might be in a situation where you would charge to be a guest rather than pay to be a guest. Or if there's a show that you really want to go on to and you love the show, but they do have a pay to play kind of thing, it's unlikely. But if they do and you really want to do it, sure, why not? But I think the vast majority of cases, this is a scam and it is monetizing the show in the wrong way. The show should be monetized through advertising or through audience or through promotions or through affiliates or wherever else, but not through the guests who are coming on and giving of their time and their energy to be a guest on the show. I would say stay away from those kinds of shows. Now, there are definitely best practices to have when being a guest on a show. Like, obviously, you want to show up early, show up at least a couple of minutes early. Most of the time, you're going to be speaking to people on Zoom or virtual studios, unless they're actually paying for you to travel as well. Some shows will do that if they have the budget for it. So show up early, whether you're live in person or whether you're on Zoom. Even with virtual recordings, being online at least a minute or two early could give an opportunity to just check sound and audio and make sure that you can finish things up in time rather than having to check all those things. So I do have a great checklist for this, and I'll share with you a bit later on how you can get hold of that to make sure you do all the right things before going on to show when you're booked in to do it as well. But how do you even find these shows in the first place? Well, there's a number of ways you can do this and take your pick. It might be shows that you already know. You can really go to some matching services that we talked about. I don't recommend going down the agency route. I use PodMatch myself. I find it's a great place for professional experts to go and be guests on other people's shows. And if you're a host as well, it can be a great place to find expert guests as well. So I've had lots of amazing guests through PodMatch. I really like it as a service and I would highly recommend it to you if you're looking to be a guest. And it might just be something you do for a few months, get yourself booked on a bunch of shows and then pause it or cancel it and find other ways to get on shows as well. As you start getting on shows, ask to be introduced. Ask your host if they know of other shows that you might be a good fit for or other hosts that they might be able to introduce you to. This is the power of your network, right? Do some simple searching in your niche, in your genre, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. There are some paid services that you could use, maybe just take out a 1 month subscription for, where you can check out where shows are in the charts and how many listeners roughly that they're getting. But if the show's on YouTube, you can certainly check them out there for free and just look at how many downloads their videos are getting and see which guests they have that are doing really well as well. So YouTube could give you a pretty good idea of that. But do know that audio podcast audiences can be a bit different to YouTube audiences. They are different formats that tend to have different demographics as well. So YouTube will only give you some insight. It won't show you the audio side of things, which could look completely different. So they might have low views on YouTube, but really huge audio downloads, or vice versa. Or they might be exploding on both channels or struggling on both, who knows. But there are things you can do to check that out. So that could be a good part of your strategy. But to go on these shows, you do need to contact them. So you'll need to find out at the very least who the host is. And if you can find their email, great. But otherwise, you might be able to send a message to them directly with the show. They probably have some method for getting in contact with them anyway, which they talk about on the show. So I would encourage you to at least drop in on a couple of episodes to get a sense of their style and how the show runs and how you could then fit in for that as well. And it will show that you've actually checked some stuff out and you can talk to them. All right, yeah, I've checked out a few of your episodes and you may not listen to the whole thing, especially if they are long episodes, but certainly if they are not, if they're on the shorter side, great. It might be pretty easy to listen to the whole thing. I tend to listen a lot on double, triple speed. Sometimes if they're speaking very slow, I'll listen on triple speed, but it can be a good way to at least get a sense of what's going on and get that information that you need to be able to get in contact with them. So that could be a good way of doing it. You may also want to do things like look at their guest list, their previous guest list, and then put their names into Apple Podcasts and see which other shows those people have been on. You're probably going to find a ton of shows that would be a good fit for you as well, from the kinds of people who are appearing on similar shows to you. And again, once you get on those shows, you can do the same thing, go through their guest lists and find new names, look at the different shows that they've been on. That can be a great strategy. You'll probably never run out of shows to look at, but I would encourage you to check a show out before you pitch them. This is going to do a few things for you. It's going to allow you to know whether you like the show or not. And that's important. If you don't like the show, if you end up not liking the host very much, you don't like their style, you find them too brash or anything like that, you will know and you'll be able to avoid it. And trust me, it's a good thing. Awkward podcast interviews are not fun. But also it's going to allow you to take a look at the kinds of things that they have already been talking about. And so if you do see that there are episodes that very much cross into what your main expertise or subject matter is in, check those ones out especially, and see what you could bring that wasn't brought in those episodes. Because podcast hosts don't really just want to reiterate what they've already done. Either you need to have a pretty unique way of explaining stuff, or you need to have some pretty unique IP that other people haven't done. So you need to be able to offer something that everyone else isn't offering. So, for example, I sometimes get coaches who want to be on my show. And sometimes they are generalist coaches. They don't have a specific kind of person they help or a specific kind of problem they solve. And that's no good to me. I need to know who they help and how they help people. I need to know that they have some frameworks that they use to work with people. I need to know that they have some IP or some expertise or some real value and something unique that they can share with my audience that's going to make it interesting and exciting for me and for you. So if you don't have those things, there's probably going to be some work to do before you start doing your podcast guesting in any kind of professional way, to make sure you have those things. And to be honest with you, as a professional speaker, coach, or expert, these are things that ideally you should have for your business going forward anyway. So you really want to have those if you want to come across as professional. But do focus on creating relationships with the shows that you go on. Be nice to people, be friendly, be warm, and be personal as well. So it's a good idea. You know, if you can leave a review for the show, leave a review for the show, leave a review for the host, send them a thank you note and an email, or maybe send them a copy of your book. I would say one of the things that most people do not do, and that I would encourage you to do, is follow up after the recording as well. It is worth keeping some kind of file of shows that you've been on. And so you should be able to get a rough idea of the expected release date for the episode. And if the host can't give you that then and there, it might be something you want to check in or have an assistant check back in on in the future. But also you probably want to review your appearance as well, because whether it's video, audio, or both, if somebody puts out an unedited video, and this has happened to me by mistake, a video ended up going out that wasn't properly edited and it got a bit rushed through. I will have to admit that it got rushed through because I wanted to get the episode published in time, and it went out with a bunch of mistakes in it that had to be corrected after the fact. Not a great look for me when the guest who was on the show listened to the episode as soon as it came out and contacted me to let me know that all these mistakes were in there. So you will want to review your appearance, if not just to pick up any mistakes that might be in there or anything you're not happy with, but also to watch and listen to what you maybe could have done better or what you did well, and to try and watch it with as much detachment as you can manage to give yourself some feedback, or maybe get someone else to watch it. You might have a coach who you already work with who could watch some of that for you or listen to it back and give you some guidance on what you did well and what you could improve for the future. But I would say keep a track of these things also, because sometimes episodes don't get published. And that can be for any number of reasons. Sometimes it could be because the host decides that the episode wasn't good enough to go out. I've had that in my experience. I was going to have an expert to talk about this, but after recording the episode, I felt like I had more to offer on the topic than the expert. And so whether that's right or wrong, that was the decision I ended up making, thinking, I think I would rather deliver this show solo, because I feel like it's more value for you to share my knowledge and content than the expert that I was otherwise looking to bring on, who was someone who came to me through one of these agencies, and I thought looked good. But when we actually showed up and did the recording, it just wasn't great. And considering I've had an episode with a lady called Christine Ammerman a while back now, I do recommend going and checking it out if you get the chance. But she's like the queen of podcast guesting, and she shared so much good value in that episode of stuff that she actually did. And she did the things that she talked about as she was a guest on my show. And I was really looking for that kind of experience again when I was bringing someone else back on to talk about this topic, because it's been a while since we've covered it. And it just wasn't really there for me. So you've got me by myself talking about this topic, but I hope you're finding some value in this. Find out where your host is on social media and connect with them there as well. That way you can stay in contact, and you're going to see when their episodes come out. You're going to see when your episode comes out, so long as it does. And you're also going to know if it doesn't. You can check back in with them and say, hey, look, I haven't seen the episode. Can you let me know? Is it still coming out? When might I be able to watch that or download it? And that could also be a good opportunity for you to just stay connected with people who you hopefully want to have in your network. Now, I generally wouldn't do normally a solo episode that is this long, but this is a topic that could be a whole workshop in itself, and one that I probably will run in the future if there's demand for it. Because even with this completely abnormal length for a solo episode for me, that we're just scratching the surface. I'm leaving a lot of content out to get through to the important stuff as quickly as possible. But look, there are a bunch of qualities that I think are going to make you a great podcast guest, and I hope you want to be a great podcast guest as well. So look to be entertaining. As a speaker, it's important to be entertaining. As a communicator, we want to deliver some level of entertainment. So do this. Someone who does podcast guesting really well, whether you like him or not, Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, does a really good job at podcast guesting. I would encourage you, if you're interested to check this out more, to listen to one of his appearances on the Jordan Harbinger show and see how podcast guesting is done well. Because Gary always knows what he's going to share. He has a story ready to go. He has some pithy comments ready to go. He wants to drop some knowledge bombs, and he nutshells the content as effectively as he possibly can so that you have memorable things to take away from those episodes. You're far more likely to remember some of the things that he might have said because he makes it really pithy and really memorable. So he does it in a really good way. Again, the episode with Christine Ammerman will give you a lot of these tips as well, showing you the value of sharing some of the episodes that you've listened to on a show when you are being interviewed, because it gives additional credibility to the host and also makes them feel good, because hardly any guest they will ever have listened to episodes of their show before, other than maybe ones that they've been on. There's a load more that I could share about podcast guesting that's going to help you be not just an amazing podcast guest, but to really get some results from this as well. But we're already really in overtime, far, far in excess of what I would normally ever do on a solo episode. If you would like to run an online workshop on this, let me know in the comments, or get in touch with me at john@presentinfluence.com, and I will happily set that up and make it happen, because I think this is such a key area. But ultimately, I'm a keynote and presentation skills coach, not a podcast guest coach. But if you're interested in this from particularly the angle of being a professional speaker and getting bang from your buck there, get in touch with me. But I want to make sure that you have at least some resource available that's going to help you to go forward. So if you feel ready to grow your authority and book more business through podcast guesting, don't just wing it. I've put together a full podcast guesting playbook, and it's going to walk you through every step from getting booked to turning interviews into clients. It's totally free and there is no fluff. You can grab your copy at the link in the show notes, the description, or head to presentinfluence.com/podcast guest and start getting booked like a pro. And hey, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed. There will be new videos every week to help you speak with more power, presence, and profit. So next time I'll be bringing you an interview, and oh my goodness, it is an awesome one. I'm going to be speaking with professional comedy writer Joel Morris, who is one of the writers behind some of the top UK comedy shows. Things like Charlie Brooker's Screen Wipe, things like Philomena Kunk, and he's been a writer in the Paddington Bear movies and so much more as well. So most of the top UK comedy shows he has had some kind of hand in as a writer. You won't want to miss that. We talk about his creative process. We talk about his book, which is really looking into the power and the influence of humor as well. And he's a super nice guy, and it's an absolutely unmissable episode. So I hope you'll join me for that. And it's certainly an excellent reason to make sure you are subscribed. We'll see you next time.